Welcome to Feeling Seen, the podcast about movies that make us feel seen. Today, my co-host is an all-star actor with more credits to his name than I can mention in this introduction. Where do I even begin? You may have seen our co-host in Take Shelter, Silver Linings Playbook, American Hustle, Boardwalk Empire, Lake George, The Righteous Gemstones, or Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. It is Shea Whigham. That is the common thread that unites all those titles I just mentioned. Shea recently starred in the Western miniseries American Primeval, alongside the incredible Betty Gilpin, as well as Taylor Kitsch and Jai Courtney, just to name a few. You can stream it now on Netflix, and please do. It got me absolutely hooked. But first, our conversation with the great Shea Whigham. We are breaking right into American Primeval, his character Jim Bridger, and Robert DuVall's performance as Mac Sledge in the 1983 drama Tender Mercies. Shea Whigham, welcome to the show. What else do the people need to know about you before we get started?
Well, thanks for having me. Know that I'm excited. I'm really excited to be here and talk to you.
I am really excited for you to be here. And of course, American Primeval, the new show that you have out that I have mainlined on Netflix. I've read you talking about your character in this. These are real people. These are real characters. These are real, inspired by real events of the American West. And you've talked about having a particular affinity or fascination with your character in Primeval. So please tell us about who you play in that and what that show is.
It's on Netflix. It's a 6-part, directed by Peter Berg, written by a tremendous writer named Mark L. Smith. It came to me, I took a look at it, and it's one of the first things that I'd read on the page that I have a litmus test, a rudimentary litmus test. Do I do it in one sitting? You know what I mean? Or do I get up? Do I go down? And I was enthralled in the piece written by Mark. And then I started doing a deep dive on Bridger, and just, there's so much about him. And when they offered it to me, I fell in love with it. For me, whether it's Eli on Boardwalk Empire or Preacher Therio on the first season of True Detective, it's about being nervous or scared to play these characters. Am I going to be able to figure them out? And old Jimmy did that for me. His waters run deep. He's a Renaissance man back in the 1850s. He came from Virginia. Everybody came from tough circumstances and background to live a day in the life of them. There were no guarantees that you were going to survive it. And so I found him. And then when I started really doing a deep dive and combing through him, that he was married to 3 Native Americans. I think it was 2 Blackfeet, 1 Shoshone. So therefore, that took me down another rabbit hole that he had to be ingratiated. The elders of the community had to take him in, and he's fascinating. So yeah, fascinating.
It's set in the 1850s, and we're in the American Mountain West. We're in Wyoming, I believe, area, and there's a character that is Betty Gilpin's character, is headed toward Cook Springs, Utah. And at this time in the area, the United States military is clashing with the Mormon settlement headed by Governor Brigham Young. And they are also, obviously, there is conflict between the native communities, the native tribes, and all of these incursion white forces that are coming through the area. And it creates, like you said, without all that, any given day, I think you would be lucky to make it through. And then you add on top of it all that. It's just there's this overlay. I'm a big horror fan. It makes this overlay of suspense over absolutely every minute of an episode, even if there's nothing bad happening, because you're like, man, is nature going to take its course? And these people just aren't going to make it through the night. Then something really bad starts happening, and you're like, oh, somehow it's gotten even more harrowing for these characters. Are they going to make it out? I'm a big fan of Westerns, and it's been so interesting to me to watch this huge sort of bloom of that television coming out of Sheridan's TV on the Paramount Network and all the shows that he's making, and how those have really jumped off, and how in a television context, we really seem to be loving a Western right now. And it still seems difficult to get those kinds of stories off the ground from a film perspective and to get people to really dig in. Like Kevin Costner's been battling that with his Horizon films, but there is absolutely an appetite for it. And it's such an incredibly, seeing a character in the heat of struggle is sort of a defining moment for any character. And then when you have a character set against the backdrop of the wild, untamed 1800s in the West, moving out across the country and like expansion, every moment is a moment of struggle and definition for a character, it seems like.
I think that was a perfect summation of how I feel about it too. And when we took this on, I think Costner's doing his thing, Taylor Sheridan's doing his thing with this world, but with ours, I remember talking you know, to Mark and Pete. I said, we want to, this has to be a visceral experience, I think, with this. Like they built, I went out early and watched them actually building my fort. So
Wow.
that was a living, breathing fort. So we wanted to make sure we depicted it as it was back in the time. So you had, everything, there was an ecosystem that was happening in there. And to think that that was the only place that we wanted, like I said, we wanted the dirt and the grime and everything to
You
be in.
feel it. You feel it watching. You smell it watching this show.
I mean, my big thing as an actor which is part of the reason why I picked DuVall to talk about
Hmm,
and
hmm.
Hackman, is never showing you the work, never showing you how hard we're working or how tough it is. You should be feeling that so that you're part of the world, not outside of it. A lot of actors nowadays, I have problems with because they tell you how hard they work,
Mm.
tell you what they did to get in there, and and for me, I would rather let the work speak for itself. And I think with this, we were able to do that. But I think one of the keys to Jim Bridger is that he is a Renaissance man. I said to Mark, whenever I take on these roles that are difficult, I said, what is the key? What's the way in? And the way in I started is how does he keep all these actions, excuse me, and fractions together? But also, I said the key to Pete. I said Pete and Mark and I knew this is through his humor, the way that he takes on, and through his, I mean, I'll say things that the economy of dialogue that Mark gave me, like I just loved it. I truly love it. I hope we're able to tell more stories because we left a lot on the floor with story wise with him.
I think there was when I was reading interviews by you, there was a quote that I loved from one that you gave where you said, "I never play a character to be memorable," and I think that leads perfectly into the conversation you brought about, as you said, Robert Duvall in the movie Tender Mercies. Because I feel like I'm going to say this, it's going to sound like I'm minimizing Robert Duvall. I'm not. I feel like Robert Duvall is almost definitionally that ethos where he is so true on screen. Like, I feel like people don't necessarily roll off the tongue Robert Duvall's name in the conversation about the greatest to ever do it, just because
Yeah.
he's so good and he's so natural that if you were like, well, what about Robert Duvall? They'd be like, I mean, of course, Robert Duvall, but he was so in the fabric of what he did, he just becomes the story and the performance itself stops being like a showpiece. Like,
Yeah.
watching this, it was one of however many times I've had in my life watching a movie and being like, God, Robert Duvall is so good in this.
Well, it's like my kids. Like, which one of my kids is my favorite? You know what I mean? I mean, at any given day, one of them is and one of them isn't. You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
with film, they asked me to pick, and I didn't want to go Godfather 1 and 2.
Hmm.
That led me to, oh wait, Duvall and stuff that made me want to be actor. So that's where it led me to that. But I mean, think about this. Tender Mercy. To me, it's the perfect film because it's not a showpiece, and they didn't think it was going to be anything, so they put it in a couple of theaters. Then it started because people discovered it. It got like 5 or 6 Oscar nominations, I think.
Yeah, and I think it won too.
But you watch him. I mean, this guy. I mean, when you start acting, you're young and you're intellectualizing everything. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? You're reading and you're putting things on his feet, and 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 then it starts to kind of make sense to you how you don't show at the start. You're in class throwing shit across the room.
Hmm.
you're breaking stuff and you're showing, and you should be doing that. But then after at some point you can see like it crosses over and you figure out how to inhabit a character. And that's what he does in this. And it was the first time I was like, this took 83. And so I started my acting later than that, but then I went back and revisited this. And because I had a teacher who said, DuVall, Bobby DuVall, watch DuVall. You got to watch Streep, you got to watch DuVall, you got to watch Hackman. And she was of that era. And so I went in, and it was the first time he traveled across Texas, hundreds of miles with a tape recorder to get the accent just right for Matt. He learned how to play guitar. He sang his own songs, and I defy he sounds like a country singer in that.
Oh my God. Like what a
Oh, right.
surprise treat the music was in this movie.
Right? Like when that first song, right? Were you like, oh my God, if you close your eyes, that could be old country western, and I'm not an aficionado on that.
I learned to love again somehow. I'll even learn to play the fool again.
Like my father used to tell me, the old country singers sang through their nose, almost a twang. And if you listen to DuVall, you know that he studied it because he's singing, and he's singing from a place of pain. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
that's why I wanted you. I was hoping you'd watch that, and just because you haven't probably revisited that in a while, right?
No, this was my first time seeing it, and I was so excited when it was what like one of the main. I wanted to interview you. You're incredible an actor. I also knew I was like, if we can get a character pick from Shea Whigham, I'm in my mind. I was like, I'm gonna bet myself he's gonna tell me a title that I haven't seen before. Not because like you
Love
have to
that.
like live in the deep cuts or anything like that, but I feel like there is just like such an appreciation of the craft and the cinema that
Yeah.
I was like, I think I'm going to get some character study work on this. And so when Tender Mercies came through, I'd heard of it, I was familiar with it, and it's crazy watching this scene. And absolutely a baby Ellen Barkin playing the daughter
Oh,
of Mac
oh,
Sledge.
Sue
He's
Ann. When Sue Ann
unbelievable.
comes on screen, baby Ellen, you're right. She's just a baby. She's so beautiful, but
I
like,
was like, who is this pristine angel? Then I was like, wait a minute, did I see Ellen Barkin's name in the opening credits? I had to like, it was like a double, like a metaphorical double take at the screen.
Mama says you tried to kill her once.
I did.
Why'd you try to kill her?
Well, you got me mad some way. I was drunk. I don't know. One of those things.
Someone told Mama the other night you were the best country western singer they ever heard. Well, Mama threw a glass of whiskey right in her face. She said they were just saying that to spite her. Do you think you ever will sing again?
Oh, I think about it once in a while. Sometimes I think I'd like to earn a little money to make things a little easier around here, or to help out if you ever needed anything.
I don't need any money. Mama set up a trust fund for me out of all the royalties she ever earned singing the songs that you wrote. I can buy myself anything I want. Anything I got's come from your music.
let me ask you this. How good is the kid acting in it?
So good. And like you even get an arc from the school bully who like starts out pushing Sonny around, like the stepson of Robert DuVall, and then like by the time there's like a town dance at the end and Mac is singing, he's like, "So, what do you know about your dad?" And he's like telling him about his own dad, and it's like, wow, I
Right?
didn't expect to like even come around on this kid. And the movie is like it's like an hour and a half. You feel like you watch a whole life play out in this hour and a half in it. I feel like it's something now where if something came out with this premise and you put like present current actors in it, it would be a great, like, I think people would think of it as like a Sundance movie in that particular way that Sundance has kind of created an image around it of like talky, quiet character where it's very human and like the journey is the destination. And this was just this was a common character kind of piece but like you said, they put it in a couple theaters. They didn't put much fanfare around it when the studio pushing it out. But it was nice to watch it and feel that kind of sense of, nice and sad to feel that kind of sense of longing for when just like the definitive actors of some of the definitive actors of all time can appear on screen and you can be like, They just made quiet movies where people talked to each other and they felt honest things.
Well, going back to the child acting, I put it on par. There's three films that I think, you go Kramer versus Kramer, you look at Jodie Foster in
Oh,
Taxi Driver, and then this one. And I said, because it's hard to get that kind of stuff. I mean, what DuVall got out of that kid is just, it's mind blowing to me. It's so beautiful.
So you're a Miss Randowitz.
Who said?
Kids at school said they had it in the paper.
I don't know if I was what you call rich, but I had a few dollars.
How'd you get it?
Writing songs.
And how you get money for that?
And people crazy enough to pay you for it, they do it.
What happened to your money?
I lost it.
How?
How? Too much Applejack.
You think you'll ever be rich again?
Well, I'll tell you what, Sonny, I don't lay awake nights worrying about it. Now look, there's a D, right? D is in dog. Now watch me. I'll call him out. I've decided to leave G here forever. Not really. Let me know if you're staying behind. That's A7. Otherwise,
It's so beautiful because every time you think it's going to go one way, that Mac's going to drink again, he's going to come home, and it's going to be a fucking like a fight. He goes the opposite way, and he's, no pun intended, he's tender with her.
mm-hmm.
But I mean, also like when you watch that and you see some of the shots of just of space and just that motel and a house, and you're in for, and I just think I think it's a beautiful film. And then like you go with DuVall. The reason I pick him is because, you watch Bang the Drum Slowly, you watch Boo Radley, and then you go into The Godfather, and you watch him, and he's their consigliere. He knows where all the bodies are buried. He knows all the secrets. And you watch him, but he's also outside of it.
Mm-hmm.
And he never feels a part of it, but he wants to, and he's not, you feel every time, like you said, with his characters, he's so in the skin of whoever he's playing, and he's a generous, and within scenes you can tell he's generous in scenes. So he wants that actor. I mean, that's the thing. Like I took something from Streep that I always call on. And she said this to another actress one time who was kind of nervous being around her. She said, I'm going to do my best work off camera, and you do your best work. So in other words, I'm not going to do my best work when the camera's on me and all that. I'm going to do my best work when I'm giving it to you, your stuff, to make you look good. I always remember, I always say that every once in a while. I pop that out to an actor that's like, me, 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 look at me, me, me. I'm like, hey, you know what Meryl Streep said?
Well, I saw you mention that in an interview that you gave, where you talk about, like, you were asked, like, what would you want on your tombstone? And, you're like, that he never phoned it in.
You're good, you.
I want to know. I want to
You
know.
went deep on my tombstone.
And you said, like, the first reaction was, with kind of a laugh, was like, he never phoned it in. But then it was, no, but for serious, like, it's that he was generous in his work.
Now I've changed that. He wasn't an asshole, really. How about that?
Well, what, a thing that I find I appreciate this more as I get older is watching this. And I appreciate a movie where there isn't a bad guy, because there isn't a bad guy in Tender Mercies. Life's tough.
Yep.
And the choices that we made that we might not have been proud of or that we might regret, those are antagonistic in our lives, and that is what we wrestle with. But it is a movie where everyone is doing their best. And because, like, you open the movie and you see Mac on the end of a bender. He's wakes up and he he seems to sort of suddenly decide that enough is enough after however long in his life. And he goes to the woman at the motel that he's at, and he's like, I'd like to work off my debt. And then he does, and he's like, and if you need any help, I'd like to stay on and keep working. And she tells him, you can't drink when you're working here. And then she mentions later in the movie, like, he'd go off and get loaded every once in a while at night, but he never did it on the job. And every once in a while he even stopped that. And then they got married. And so, and then you're watching with a man who we learn was a pretty notable country singer. He has fans start to show up at the motel and be like, I really grew up on his records. And I thought it was so interesting, like watching this through the lens of you presenting it and seeing this character who seems like he's ready to sort of like put it all behind him, whatever that life was, to have this new life with this lovely wife he has and the stepson. But we see his past where he has a daughter that he really never knew. And he is filled with the regret of having been an abusive drunk. But he misses that thing of his life that was his art. And he misses the music. And there was in another interview I read with you, like somebody asked, like, would you want to keep doing this forever? And you were like, I want to be, I think it was like John Huston, like put me on an oxygen tank on set and have it be to the very end. And it felt like in you two artists who are so connected to like the spare truth of a scene, it felt like that. I thought of that quote from an interview while I was watching this and seeing Mac and feeling an artist pulled toward, even at the very end, no matter how much he thought he could turn away from it, like this was actually something that wasn't just nice to do and made him some money. It was a part of his soul to continue doing.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, God, you really that was you really paid attention and watched it because like think how sad that was.
Oh,
There's so much beauty in it, but there's always so much sad when he writes a song and they reject him.
oh yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just, and he doesn't understand why. But like, think about like when he asked her to marry him, it was, I can't remember, but it wasn't it just, he just goes, could you see yourself being with me?
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
goes, yeah.
Would you think,
And
would you consider marrying me? And she's just like, yes, I would.
I hadn't had a drink in 2 months. I think the drinking's behind me.
Do you? I'm glad. I don't think it gets you anywhere.
You ever thought about marrying again?
Yeah, I have. You?
I thought about it lately. I guess it's no secret how I feel about you. A blind man could see that. Would you think about marrying me?
Yeah, I will.
And then you're for a second as the audience, you're like, wait, was that a proposal or was that a proposal? That was a commitment to think about the proposal. And then,
Right.
oh my God, they're married.
Right. And it's just, I remember he laid her on the bed and he kissed her, and it was sensual and simple and beautiful. I mean, and two, I remember when she comes back, and Barkin comes back and she says, "You used to sing me that
Oh,
song," and he goes, "Nope, oh, I don't remember it." And then at the very end, there's a shot of him across the street with the kids looking at him, and he's singing on the wings of a dove. You
mm-hmm.
know, so he's haunted, and he's doing the best that he can, like you said. And life is so much gray, and you mess up, and then you try, but you're doing the best you can.
Well, and I think that's actually like I really like what you pointed out about like because you're kind of waiting for him to come back drunk, like you're waiting for him to have fallen off the wagon. You're kind of the movie is so great at like teasing up to the point where you think the explosive thing is gonna happen and this is all gonna fall apart or
Yep.
someone's gonna hurt someone's feelings terribly. But it does always play a more sort of like a tender version of that. And as an actor, like I wanted to hear about that choice of like taking it up to the line of like, I could make the bigger decision right now, or I could make the more internal decision right now. And sort of that difference. And obviously it all depends on the scene, the character, but I guess even from just a perspective of watching that kind of execution in Robert DuVall, like hearing what that does for you, what that means to you as an actor.
Oh, it'll always be dependent um, on the character himself.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, if we go back to like uh, Tigerland or Eli, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
very emotional human being. In Tigerland, I had put this guy living in a trailer park, didn't know his daddy, grew up on Doritos, and just had to fight like a junkyard dog. And so he's emotional. His maturity level is that of an element. He never even finished elementary school, basically. Eli with the brother and Nucky, he's Fredo. He's always being overlooked. They never said he's going to be Nucky, so he's always so he's emotional. But then you come back to someone like someone like Bridger.
I was thinking, like, as you were talking, I was like, I feel like Bridger is like a logical conclusion of this conversation.
Yeah, I think Bridger, for me, he, I mean, that first scene where I walk out, the horses ain't, the mules ain't where they're supposed to be. And then the Frenchman's just, and I know what he's capable of. And then, the old man gets himself drunk, shot her guide, and I'm like, fuck. Bridger has what I love about these guys. They have a code, so
Yes.
when in that scene, where I'm sitting there with my right hand guy, and then the bounty hunter comes in, and I see the picture of her. I'm not going to give her up, even though she's on the run for killing a man. And I love exploring those kind of codes, and it's like I said, but Bridger he's just fascinating with all that.
It's time for a break, but we will be right back with Shea Whigham. Then, at the end, I will have one quick thing before I go about Michelle Tratchtenberg. So we are going to do a little shout out to Michelle at the end of the show. Please stick around and remember her with me.
Walking About is the podcast about walking. It's a walkumentary series where I, Alan McLeod, and a fun, friendly guest go for a walkabout. You'll learn about interesting people and places and have the kind of conversations you can only have on foot. We've got guests like Lauren Lapkus,
I figured something out about this map, like how to read it.
Betsy Sidaro,
I had no clue. That's awesome and nuts.
John Gabris,
This is like great first date for like broke 20-somethings,
and more. Check out Walking About with Alan McLeod on Maximum Fun.
Hello, podcast recommendation service.
Hello there, young man. I'm looking for a new podcast to listen to. Something amusing, perhaps.
Oh, what about Beef and Dairy Network?
Something surreal and satirical.
Well, I would suggest Beef and Dairy Network.
Ideally, it would be a spoof industry podcast for the beef and dairy industries.
Yes, Beef and Dairy Network.
Maybe it would have brilliant guests such as Josie Long, Heather Ann Campbell, Nick Offerman, and the actor Ted Danson.
Beef and Dairy Network.
I don't know. I think I'm going to stick to Joe Rogan.
The Beef and Dairy Network podcast is a multi-award-winning comedy podcast, and you can find it at MaximumFun.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
I do also appreciate very much that I saw you call Betty Gilpin a secret weapon when you were talking about American Primeval coming together, because I think that is the perfect description. But somehow it's still a secret what a weapon Betty Gilpin is. But my God, an absolutely transformative screen presence.
There are these actors that I flow through with, and I see them, and I see how dedicated they are to craft. And she is right there at the top. And what I mean by that, speak about emotional. When I was playing G. Gordon Liddy in
Gaslit,
and where all of that went, and I saw her and I just watched. We got to know each other a little bit. I didn't have a lot of stuff with her, but Matt Ross, my director, I was saying she looks like the real deal, and he goes, she is the real deal, and she hasn't quite gotten yet. I think she's got the perfect career, personally.
I'm with you. I'm right there with you.
She is. So then we did that, and then we did American Primeval. I knew she was on it, so I knew we were collecting like really dedicated actors, because you have to have that in this to go into a world like this. And I'm not giving anything away. She was pregnant. She got pregnant toward the end of filming, I think, and what I mean, it was really difficult, not Hollywood difficult. It was difficult. We had to go back and do some pickup because of snowfall, and snow wasn't right. And she's aces. And then I just did another thing with her and Mike Shannon with Matt Ross again. And again, she just comes and she delivers. She packs up her husband and 2 kids, newborn. She moves to Budapest. She's like, and I always, I call her by her character name on the day. She loves it. She gets it. And, so she was always Sarah Roll, because if when you're of that time, I have to believe it. So I'm always looking for ways. So Sarah Roll, and you're so right about her. And she's about to just, I think, pop into in a big way.
I mean, however one feels about the movie The Hunt, I think it's one of the greatest performances committed to screen of the 21st century. I got a chance to speak to the director about that, and I asked one of the producers who I had a conversation with. I was like, so could anybody have directed that out of Betty Gilpin, or was that just from inside of her and no one could control it? And the director and the producer were honestly like, Jordan, you turn the camera on and you step back. There's you just let her go, and you just be grateful you got Betty Gilpin.
You can talk acting with her all day long. She loves it. She comes from actors, parents, and she comes from New York, and she's curious. She's infinitesimally curious, and so she does all the work, all the left brain work, the intellectual work, and then when you're on with her in the day, you have to let all that go. You can't be playing your research. You can't be like, oh,
right.
You basically, this woman is on the run trying to survive with her kid. I meet with her. I have a heart. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I said to them, I don't know how I'm going to react. It may not be worth my time. I'm trying to solve 50 other fucking different things that are going on in my Ford, but I do see the kid, and I do see he's limping and a cripple, and I know what it's going to take. And so she was just, I could go on and on about it. I love her. She's amazing.
Well, and that bridges me into something that I have wanted to ask about, which is how you have, it seems like you have amassed a creative community of friends around you who you've been able to work with multiple, I understand that you're very close with Michael Shannon. You've worked together many times. You were ingratiated to Martin Scorsese in an almost opportunity years before Boardwalk Empire came around. But then you got Boardwalk Empire and you were finally able to cement that, and obviously multiple projects with Betty Gilpin. And I wanted to hear about that. It's such a freelance life being an actor. It's a contractor's job is what it is. And I wanted to hear about returning into those familiar environs when you get the chance, having that kind of shared vernacular with the person and what that enables for you as a performer.
Oh, I mean, it's everything. For me, it's everything, because if you're a student of what we do, and if you love film, if you're a cinephile, you'll gravitate toward those 70s films. And what did they do? So then you backtrack and you reverse engineer it. You go Coppola, Lumet, Marty, Scorsese. And what they would do is they would put a troupe of actors together. You know what I mean? Think about Cuckoo's Nest. You got Nicholson. They lived for weeks at a hospital. And Nicholson, and everybody's living in the characters. And Jack, they'd go to lunch, and Jack would ask, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that was the infamous state hospital of Oregon.
But look what happens out of that, because, look what happens out of Coppola when he puts, this group together for God, and he fights so hard for them. And Lumet on Dog Day Afternoon, where they lived, rehearsing, discovery, because, Pacino didn't find that character at the start. They had to go back and reshoot after he dropped in. He had to fight for John Casale. So you would never, if you didn't have Casale, played him opposite as they wanted, So I remember when I was going into with Danny and the boys on Vice Principals. That character, Danny asked me to come and play him, and I just wasn't interested, because on the page he was written as just an ass. He was an asshole toward Danny, and I said, I think the key, and I remembered back to Casale playing opposites, and I said, I think Ray, who's the motorcycle cross, I think he loves Danny. I think he loves him. And that was the whole input. So you're always grabbing on, and that's what it means. We go over to Budapest for Matt Ross. We all know Matt. Not all of us, but I know Matt, and to tell Mike Shannon, he loves actors and he loves exploration. So I think you do. You put a troupe together, and you get to know each other, and then you trust each other. And in trust, I mean, I was with Colin Farrell is my closest friend in the world, and he's
It's
doing,
been so incredible to see, like, God damn it, that guy who
oh,
was already good and he just keeps getting better.
no, I mean, we were talking last night a little bit about how the trust that we had on Tigerland. When you trust the other actor, you can go places.
Right.
I mean, think about it. If you have a brother or a sister, or your mother and father, you can hurt them much more than you can hurt someone that you just meet on the subway or on an airplane if you call them names and threaten them, or a bar or whatever.
Mhm.
And that's where, when you trust, then you can go to places like Betty and I would be able to go places if I didn't know someone
Right.
else, or Mike Shannon and I, so yeah, it's everything. It's everything. Sorry, that's a long-winded editor, but it's everything.
I gotta say, the casting of American Primeval, I have been so impressed every episode at how everybody is exactly where they should be. And
Yeah.
actors that might not be at like the top of a studio's, but like Jai Courtney,
Jai.
like I want to see Jai Courtney deployed exactly where he should be. He is in the show. Taylor Kitsch, this is a perfect lane for him. Betty Gilpin, we know. Like it just like each actor who is just sort of like known for getting the job done and doing good
Yeah.
is doing that and is given such a showcase in this show. And I think that I was regarding in American Primeval, which is something that I feel like it feels like TV still has access to in a way that it is more challenging for film to have. And I thought of it while watching Tender Mercies, even too, such a small, intimate movie. Like this scene, you have the scene at where you're seeing his ex-wife perform in concert, and you have him performing at like the town dance. You have him singing, and then watching Primeval, and there are like this fort is teeming with people, and I just like seeing real people on screen moving in a background and feeling like there is life being lived around the central characters, when it kind of like I've know so many people in like independent genre filmmaking where it's like the mandate is like, well, can you shoot in one location with 3 people because we can put money behind that kind of
Right.
ethos. And then thinking of like watching the Mission Impossible movies and the scale that they get to exist at. We recently talked about on the podcast Gone with the Wind. And a shot that has stuck with me from watching that, again, first time watch for me, but a shot that has stayed with me more than almost anything else is that big pullout where Scarlett O'Hara has become like a nurse in Atlanta for the wounded soldiers. And the frame just keeps getting wider and wider and wider. And the frame is filled with wounded soldiers on the ground. And just watching the scale of real people being cast to be put in something, watching something where you can feel tangibly the scale of it, even if it's an intimate scale or a wide scale, but you can feel a scale of it, feels like such a luxury.
Cinema, right? It's
Yeah.
cinema. And that's what McQuarrie and I have the Markel Smiths and Howard Quarters, writer of Boardwalk, and Perry Mason and Tim Van Patten. I mean, they understand cinema and scope, you know. And like I just saw The Brutalist.
Oh, yeah.
I went and I sat by myself in the theater, and I just marveled at what that young director, I say young because I'm older now,
Right, yeah.
but on his 3rd film ever, what he's able to do, what he's able to get, from that first hug between Brody and Novola, that
Mhm.
first hug that they let it linger, and the train's coming in and steam, and he's made it. I mean, to me, I don't know. They didn't say a word. He said nothing. It's like DuVall and coming back to Tender Mercies. He doesn't say it. He walks into that funeral home where his daughter's gonna be, and it's so sparse. It reminds me the first time, like, I was gonna pick, Silence of the Lambs. I love that film, but
Mhm.
and when Jodie Foster walked in to see the first girl that had been killed with all those male cops around, and it's just that little tiny Baptist church, and the reason I picked Tender Mercies is because I recognize that guy. I recognized Mac, where I'm from. My father's from Alabama, my mother's from Georgia, and I recognize, oh, wait a minute. And then I started doing the deep dive. How did he get there? Oh, and then he learned to play, and then he learned to sing, and then he traveled hundreds of miles to get it. The accent just, because he's so, when you hear him, he's, it's just amazing.
Well, I guess my conclusion question to you would be with that, with, coming back to what we touched on at the beginning of, I never play a character to be memorable. I wondered if that is an ethos that you began your career with, or if that something you came to over time and perspective that you settled on. That is how you wanted to comport yourself as a coworker with people.
Yeah, and just to not be facetious in any way, you want. I think what I meant by that, you could literally take it like, oh, I don't want my character to be memorable. That's not what I'm saying. You know that. I You want them, but without having to like talk about how hard I work or how what we did to get, you don't want to you don't want to see behind the curtain. You want to just watch the magic, So the more you talk about it, so it's something I was instilled in me back in training school by this woman named Eulalie Noble,
Mm.
who was an actress of the time, and she taught me what it means to build a character, what it means to be an artist and an actor. And I've never lost that. I never tried it. The fame and thing you get in the premiere, all that, it's amazing. I'm not going to say it's great, and the people, but when someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, dude, I don't even want an autograph or a picture. I just want to real quick say about what you did in Jim Bridger." Or I had a guy say the other day, I swear to you, I'm not making this up. It just came to me. He goes, "My grandmother and I, do you mind me saying something to you?" I said, Absolutely. He goes, "My grandmother and I, who meant everything in the world to me, tough guy." He was a tough guy. He goes, it started getting choked up, and he said, my grandmother used to watch Boardwalk Empire, and Eli was her favorite. And I'm like, that means so much. Can you tell you? And she go, "Oh no, she died."
Oh.
And he started, and I go, that to me that's what it should be about.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I'm crying
Yeah,
at
no,
that right now.
Same.
Well, I think that is a perfect note to end on. Shea, this has been such a fantastic conversation, and I'm so grateful to you taking all this time to talk with me. I'm over the moon. Thank you so much.
Listen, thanks. I enjoyed it myself. I really did.
Thank you so much to Shea Whigham for an awesome conversation. What a privilege. You can stream American Primeval right now on Netflix. Easy breezy handful of episodes dedicated to the drama and savagery of the violence that formed the American Mountain West. Casual. Shea will also be starring in Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning this May alongside Tom Cruise, so I hope I see you in the theater for that one. And now, that one quick thing before I go. Sad news this week. Michelle Tratchtenberg, beloved among many, but especially so to her millennial fans who grew up right alongside her. She passed away this week at the age of just 39. And there was a Michelle Tratchtenberg for so many seasons. You may have met her, as I did, in one of my very favorite shows as a kid, Pete and Pete, which I saw someone on Twitter extremely accurately describe as Twin Peaks for children. She was Nona F. Mecklenburg. The F stood for free range. And if it was a Pete and Pete, maybe it was, highly likely it was Harriet the Spy, which I think, honestly, I could say launched the career of so many journalists in the millennial age range. You might have come to her in Buffy as Dawn Summers, the sister of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. You might have come to her maybe a little bit later on and then backtracked into her body of work when she was the iconic Georgina in Gossip Girl. I feel like I'm really plotting through this one quick thing because she was exactly my age, and it's just so sad. One of my favorite movies she was in was the Black Christmas remake from the 2000s. She just had a way with a line delivery. She could put some extra mustard on goddamn anything. And as the remembrances pour in, it seems like uniformly presenting a picture of a woman who was so passionate and fiery is something that's come up over and over again, and funny and grounded and talk to cast, talk to crew, would make people feel welcome, would make people feel at home on set. I have a friend who was close with Michelle Tratchtenberg, and she always spoke of her the same way. I always just heard about this friend who was of hers who was an incredibly loyal and devoted person, who showed up for her people, who was funny as hell, who was so kind, and who was herself so completely, a sort of ferocious personality. And so seeing all those recollections of her come in today, echoing the accounts that I've heard from somebody and I know in my own life, it's just when you start to hear those things over and over about the same person, it's like, wow, those things were true. Those were the points that touched everyone. And gosh, I hope she got the chance to know how many of us she helped raise as she was growing up alongside of us over a career that started as a tiny child and spanned decades. So many remembrances of her because she worked for a long damn time in this industry and met so many people and moved so many people along the way. So today, we dedicate this episode, we dedicate this feeling scene to Michelle Tratchtenberg. You were a gift to us. And as Georgina said in a grand entrance in Gossip Girl, tell Jesus that the bitch is back. Yeah, so that is our show. We're closing it out with Michelle. You can keep up with us wherever you get your podcasts. Hit that follow button wherever you're listening to get a new episode in your feed anytime it drops. You can also follow us on Instagram at Feeling Seen Pod. You can follow me and the show on Blue Sky, Feeling Seen, or me, Jorcru, Jorcru, which I also am on Twitter. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. The show is produced by Daniel Huesias. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher, and this is a production of Maximum Fun. Rest in peace, Michelle.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows, supported directly by you.